HDB takes its role as master developer and planner very seriously. For new towns, much effort goes behind the scenes in planning and developing our estates and ensuring the town has a full range of amenities and facilities. And HDB is always looking to improve, taking in feedback, suggestions, and how the next project can be done better. For example, I visited Punggol recently, where we opened the new neighborhood center at Oasis Terraces. And this is prime site where the neighborhood center is located. It's waterfront site next to an LRT station. We could have sold this to a private developer, but we decided that it's central to the town. We want to make it a HDB neighborhood center, so HDB develops it as a neighborhood center with integrated facilities, rooftop gardens, greenery, play areas, and lots of common spaces for residents to interact with each other. And if you get feedback and responses from the residents, I think it has certainly been very positive. So this is the first of our new generation neighborhood centers, and we will be doing more in the coming years. I would also like to assure Dr. Tan Wu Meng that HDB is continually looking at ways to improve the design of new flats so that within the flat itself, there will be more common spaces to facilitate interaction between residents. For our older towns, we have various upgrading plans in place. At the flat and precinct level, we have the HIP, the Home Improvement Program, and the Neighborhood Renewal Program. Mr. Peng highlighted some issues with the quality of HIP workmanship in some projects, as well as the issue of clothes drying rack on the lower floors. So we will look at these specifically on these particular issues. Engineer Dr. Lee Biwa offered several suggestions using CIPC funds for designated smoking points, smoke-free flats, and TOL charges for essential services. Again, these are suggestions we will look into. Mr. Peng Eng Huat asked about lift access for blocks without the LUP. I think he and several members have asked this question before. We are continuing to explore technical solutions for the remaining blocks where lift upgrading is not viable today. Meanwhile, as we have explained in this House, for those who are in urgent need of direct lift access due to medical conditions or disability, they may approach HDB for assistance. Engineer Lee Biwa and Mr. Peng Eng Huat asked about our plans for HIP, particularly the next phase of HIP. We have ramped up the pace of HIP to complete upgrading for flats built up to 1986. All such flats will be announced for HIP by the end of this year. Not completed construction, because that takes a while, but we will have announced by the end of this year. So the big question, what about HIP for the blocks built between 1987 and 1997? I'm happy to share that we will start selecting the flats for this batch of HIP from next year onwards. The scope of works will be the same as the existing HIP. So there will be an essential component covering spalling concrete, waste stacks, electrical load, which will be fully paid for by the government, and there will be an optional component covering bathroom, door, ease items, which will be highly subsidized. There are a total of 230,000 flats in this batch. So we are starting the announcement next year. It doesn't mean that everything will be completed next year. It will have to be done in phases over a period of time, but we will commence the process from next year onwards. As Engineer Dr. Lee Biwa highlighted, we will also upgrade private estates through the Estate Upgrading Program, or EUP. We will select estates for the next batch of EUP by the second half of this year. And we will continue to review and see what more can be done for private estates. Beyond upgrading, we are looking at verse and longer-term plans to systematically redevelop and rejuvenate our older HDB towns. As Mr. Chong Ki-Hiong said, this ought to be done not just at the individual block level, but also at the precinct level. And we are planning well in advance for this, because we do not want public housing in Singapore to degenerate into urban slums like what has happened in other cities. Public housing must continue to integrate Singaporeans of all backgrounds. We must never become segregated by class, race, or income. And this also relates to the point made by Associate Professor Walter Teixeira about the differences in the prices of HDB flats across the island and whether this would lead to more social stratification. I think he has raised valid concerns, and it is something we are aware of and we are continuing to watch out for, including looking at different ways in which we can mitigate against this. In the longer term, the best way to tackle this is to ensure that every part of Singapore is well developed and that every HDB precinct has good amenities and facilities, convenient access to transport networks, as well as job centers closer to home. And that's what we have been doing, and the upcoming master plan will continue with more efforts in this direction. It does not mean that we can automatically equalize property values, but at least we can temper some of the excesses in the market. I should also say, when you speak to Singaporeans, you find that they have an attachment to a particular place, and it often goes beyond monetary value. I grew up in the East, and my friends and neighbors would always say the East is special, we will never move. And indeed, many of them still stay there, their children are still staying there. When I joined politics in 2011, I served in Boon Lay in the West. Many residents in the West have a close affinity for the area and have special memories growing up there. Now, I am an MP in Marsiling, UT, in the north. My residents are proud to be in the north. They call Woodlands the star destination, and I've come to grow fond of the area too. Are there price differences in flat values between different parts of Singapore? Yes, there are. But the residents in each area take great pride in where they stay. It's about the memories they have of the place, the sense of community, the connection and identity with where they grew up. And you cannot attach a price tag to these. So we have to continue working hard to make sure that every HDB town, every precinct is kept livable and vibrant both now and in the future.